Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the REDX podcast. My name is Andrew, and I am super excited for today's guest. We've got one of my favorite coaches, authors, and speakers with us, Darryl Davis. Darryl, how are you doing today, my man?
Good, Andrew. Now, I did see some of your other shows, and you said the same exact thing about those people.
Well, I mean it about you, Darryl. I promise. You're the exception. So, you caught me for being scripted, man. It's a little embarrassing.
Sorry if I threw you off there.
No, you're good. You're good. Today, what's up?
I said bob and weave.
Bobbing and weaving. Well, we've got a lot of great stuff to talk about with Darryl today. I'm super excited. He's going to talk about how to become a listing machine with FSBOs and Expireds, for sell by owners and Expireds. So we've got a ton of valuable information coming your way. Again, Darryl, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here. As always, to our audience, this is a participatory event. So please chat in your questions, chat in your comments. We'll pass those along to Darryl. We'll do our best to get all of them answered here. And if you do miss the live version of this show, you can always subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can catch the show later at theredx.com/podcasts, and you can totally catch the recording of this and listen whenever you want. So let's jump right in, Darryl. Before we kind of jump into the meat of our discussion, let's have you give a little introduction, tell a little bit about yourself for any of the audience members who don't know you.
Okay, so I started real estate when I was 19 years old. I actually, I was a struggling actor. I was in a couple of movies and commercials. The thing about acting is when you tell somebody you're an actor, they say, "Oh, really? What restaurant are you playing?" So I didn't want to be that thing. So I got into real estate because I thought it was a great profession. You could make your own hours. I could still go into New York City and audition. But then I became really successful and started loving real estate, phased out of acting, then did six transactions a month as an agent, built my business from FSBOs and Expireds.
Right.
And and from New York, which, FSBOs in New York, they're tough. They eat their young. Right. They literally will curse at you and hang up, and then you got to call them back, say, "I'm sorry, we got disconnected."
So here's the real question, Darryl, is where can we find some recordings of you tap dancing on Broadway? That's what I want to see.
Yeah, well, that's my what is that new platform where it's fans only? You got to pay extra for that.
The Darryl Davis only fans. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
So then I got into managing an office, and then I met a speaker, Floyd Wickman, who became my mentor. He recruited me to train for him, which I did, and so then I got into the training world, and I've been doing that for 30 years now. I've written 3 books for McGraw-Hill Publishing, have my CSP designation, which is a very high honor in the speaking world, which I'm very proud of. That's why I'm not bragging. I'm just proud of it because it's not easy to get it. You can't even apply for 5 years. So it's a whole process. But anyway, so that's my readers. And then now we train and coach agents. We have what they're called power agents. So we have our coaching program that is just incredible with what we do with our students. I'm very proud of that membership that we have. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Well, what a great introduction. And I think I'm super excited for a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, because you're obviously, I know this, and I know that the audience is going to learn this, but you're an amazing coach and an amazing speaker, and we've got a ton of people watching right now. So I'm super excited. Let's jump right in. I want to get into kind of that main point of for sell by owners and Expireds.
Yeah.
What makes working for sell by owners and Expireds easier now than ever before?
Well, great question, Andrew. When the pandemic hit, here's what I noticed about my students. So let me just say this before I answer that.
Okay.
Andrew, in our coaching program, there's 2 things we do every week. There's a lot we do, but every Wednesday we do webinars with our students, and every Monday I talk to my students. So they call in on a telephone line or Zoom, and they ask me questions for 2 hours, and I'm coaching them every Monday. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I'm not in a tower talking about real estate. I didn't put my mute on my phone. I'm not in a tower talking about real estate. Like my students, they bring me what they're dealing with right at the current time, and so it helps me stay sharp. And
Right.
one of the things I learned, Andrew, now to your question, through that process is my power agents were telling me, geez, the FSBOs and expireds are nicer. This was right into
during the pandemic.
During the pandemic.
Right.
And so what we ascertained was the reason why, in my opinion,
Sure.
is because, when the pandemic hit, we were all confused, about how we're going to do this business and, how do you do showings when you're sheltering in.
Mm-hmm.
So the homeowners were like us multiplied by 10.
Right.
So they seemed more like, I need a realtor. I need help. I can't do this myself at all. And so it really kind of raised the bar, I think, in the perception of real estate professionals and what we can do for people. Nice. And that's it. So that's what and I believe it's still true that it's still easier now to get FSBOs and expireds because of the perception. By the way, I call them civilians. I call homeowners and buyers civilians.
Okay.
And so civilians, they recognize they need us more now than ever.
Right. And what do you think? Do you think that the low interest rates or like what really played into that shift in perception? Because I don't know, it seems almost counterintuitive to me that, everyone needs to lock down, everyone needs to, shelter in place, the pandemic hits, and you think people would just want to stay where they're at,
Well, there was two things that we noticed in that regard is because of the sheltering in, people were like, they either loved their house or they hated their house. And so most of the time they hated it because they are not taking a break. There's a lot of reasons why they hated it. Like, they're stuck with their spouse 24/7, which, by the way, any marriage that survived the pandemic, they ain't going nowhere.
It's a good marriage. Yeah.
It's a good marriage.
Yeah.
But anyway, what happened was, even my house, like I started looking, man, I want to buy a new house. I'm like tired of my house. Right. It's like, and we started spending money. We started fixing it. I mean, if this is going to be my staycation, whatever, and I'm going to be living here 24/7, I better really enjoy the heck out of it. So people were either spending money to stay or they were saying, I got to get out of here. I want something nice. I want my dream house. And with the interest rates being as low as they were, but it being right. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's all relative too, right? Is that when we're used to for sale by owners and expireds being super combative, right? Annoyed with real estate agents or feeling like they don't need a real estate agent. I think any varying degree of that, any decline in that combativeness is going to make them seem like they're angels to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, that was the thing. If somebody is a FSBO and they want to sell their house and they're worried that somebody's a walk-in petri dish of virus, how do I sell my house if I'm worried about dying?
Right.
So when a real estate professional calls up, say, hey, don't worry about it. I got a safe showing model, which we created this thing called the safe showing. It's an acronym for safe. Make sure that people's airways are covered and their feet are covered and it's sanitized. So we go through this acronym for safe. And anyway, so yeah, that's what we found.
Can we break down that acronym? You said sanitized, airways, feet. What's the E in safe?
Yeah. The E, Julie, help me. What was the E? I just had a brain fart.
Julie's going to help us out there.
I got it. It's eyes only. Eyes
only.
Yeah, meaning you as your parents used to tell you, you look with your eyes, not your hands.
Right. So sanitize, make sure there's ventilation, airways.
So airways, cover your airways. In other words, it was a mask, but then if we use mask, we couldn't say safe. So we had to come up with an A, airways. And, gotcha. Your feet are covered because, by the way, just as an aside, there was, where the virus tested most highest concentration in a hospital? It was on everybody's feet.
Really?
Yeah, because the virus falls to the ground.
Yeah.
And people are walking.
Walk all over it.
Yeah, so they found that's where it was the highest concentration when they did tests in the hospital. So we said, you know what, we should be using the booties or tell people to take their shoes off.
Nice.
And
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, thank you, Julie, for putting that in the YouTube chat. She put the SAFE acronym in there. So we've got a question that I think is a great one here from Robert. Robert asked, with these for sale by owners and expired conversations, what do you think are the best openings, especially right now where they're a little less combative, a little easier to work with?
Opening as far as I'm assuming Robert's talking about when you call them, yes?
Yeah, probably cold call. What's the first thing you say to them, or how does the beginning of that conversation sound?
So, Robert, I'll talk directly to you, being that you asked the question. There's a couple of things I'm going to say. Is that the training that I teach all my students is not to be a memorized robot script, a rehearsed person. I'm against scripts. It's called human being, not human doing. And so when we teach the listing appointment, we teach a secret sauce on how to communicate things without memorized scripts. But the exception to that, Robert, is when you're on the telephone, because there is a part where you're going to be fluid and you're going to speak from your heart, not your head, but not in the beginning. The beginning, most homeowners have their own script that lasts 60 seconds. A lot of people don't know this Andrew, is that FSBOs have their own training course. It was created by a Frenchman in the 19th century. His name was Jacques FSBO. And true story, Andrew.
Jacques FSBO.
Jacques FSBO. And Jacques teaches how to get rid of realtors. So the FSBO is usually good in the first 60 seconds.
Right.
But here's what's interesting. After that 60 seconds, they're a totally different person. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to answer Robert's. I'm going to give him the script in a second. Okay. But what I want people to really get, it's like when you used to go to the bars where they had the mechanical bulls, which I've gone to many a time. Is you got to, if you hang on to that bull for 60 seconds, the bull changes, it stops, it gets easier. And a FSBO is the same way. Okay. They may be nasty, they may push back, they may give you objection, but if you keep them on the phone for 60 seconds, there's a line of demarcation. They shift totally. And here's why, Andrew, here's the punchline, is because that first 60 seconds, they've done it over and over and over again with all the other agents who called before. So they got really good at it. They became a little cold to it, a little cold heart, because it's automatic for them.
They're too scripted.
Exactly.
Nice.
So after that 60 seconds, they got nothing.
Right.
There's no more script. So now they become who shows up is the real homeowner.
Right.
And that's when the magic happens.
Right. And that's when an agent has the power to really show off what they've got,
Yeah, so let's go through the very first 60 seconds. Hi, I'm calling about the house for sale. They say, yes. Is it still available? Well, yes, it is. Well, hi, this is Darryl Davis from Power Realty. How are you? Fine. What do you want? That's the funny part. Once they know you're a realtor, then they jump into nasty mode. Well, I'm looking at a copy of the ad, Mr. Miss Hanahan. I'm very impressed with your property. The reason why I was calling is I was wondering, are you working with brokers that sell your property? No, we're not. We're doing this on our own. Oh, I see. Well, I'm just curious. Is that because you want to save the brokerage fee? You're darn right. You guys charge too much. Okay, good. Well, like I said, I'm looking at a copy of the ad. It sounds so lovely. By the way, did you write it yourself? Yes, we did. Well, I see it says 3-bedroom, 4-bath. And then you look at it. I'm into the 60 seconds now. So now what happens? This is where now after that part, now there's no script. Now you start asking questions about the house as if you were a buyer, because they've also been programmed that to answer questions about how many bedrooms, how many baths, how big is the property, is it finished, And then when you feel like you've got an opening, and this is where the instinct comes in. The more calls you make, the better instinct that you get. It's like any skill-based thing. You're like a chef. A chef goes to school. They learn how to measurements and how to use the tools. After a while, they get so good, it's instinctive. They don't look at recipe cards. They have an instinct on how to make the dish. So same thing with calling the for sale by owners. And at the end, here's the magic. Andrew, here is the magic. Get in the door. Which, by the way, I should have prefaced with this. When I call FSBOs, my batting average, if I speak to 3, I'll schedule 2. Some of my colleagues are really good on certain things. I won't mention all their names because I'm going to leave out somebody. But some speakers teach referral business. Some speakers teach motivational. I teach FSBOs Expireds because I think I'm the best at it. But anyway, so because I'll call 3 and I'll get 2. Now here is the The magic thing here, Andrew, and then I'll jump it back to you.
Okay.
When I feel like I got them, there's trust there. They like me. I'm going to say, let me ask you something, Andrew. Would you be offended if I just stopped by to see your house? That's it. That word offended. There's something magical about it. See, if I broke down that barrier and they like me a little bit, Andrew, I said, listen, Andrew, would you be offended if I just stopped by to take a look at your house? They're not going to say, yes, I'd be offended. Why'd you even call? They're not going to, because you passed that part, you see.
Right.
Anyway, so that's the quick down and dirty dialogue call. How was that?
I love that. That was perfect. And we've got tons of people in the chat saying like, wow, what gems. These are perfect. Great. Some great feedback there. So I love this idea of your instinct kicking in, right? Your real estate instinct kicking in after that first 60 seconds. How can agents, especially newer agents, work on developing that instinct so that when they make it past that first 60 seconds with a for sale by owner, they don't freeze up and panic, right? What's the best way to develop that?
Well, it's instinct is something. Now watch this. Instinct is developed. Mm-hmm. It's not taught. Right. It's not something you do. Mm-hmm. If you're baking a cake, I may use a lot of food analogies here, Andrew, because of the sheltering in. I've been eating a lot. I'm gaining a lot of weight.
They're the best analogies. Keep them coming. I love them.
So So anyway, if you take a cake and you if a cake says it's going to take 34 minutes at 350 degrees to cook it, you ain't going to cook that thing in 5 minutes. It's going to take as long as it takes.
Yep.
And so an agent's instinct is like baking a cake. It takes time. It takes time, and what a new agent should do is to do it over and over again. And every time that they make the call, they get a little bit more comfortable. That's where the instinct gets developed. Right. When I first learned how to be a speaker, mm-hmm. You're standing on stage. I'm reminiscing because it's been a while since I've been on the stage. But, when you're on stage, you feel the room. You can feel the room. Like, do you go with this joke or do you not do this joke? Do you do the joke later? Do you spend 5 minutes on that point instead of 2 minutes on the point? Because the audience, like, you feel it. Right. And it's almost like you can hear, watch this, you can hear the listening of the other people. When you're on a listing appointment, it's the same way. Most of us, when we're doing a listing appointment, we're thinking, we're focusing and listening on our own words. Mm-hmm. What we need to be listening to is the listening of the person you're talking to. And it's that listening that should shape your speaking. Right. That takes over and over again doing it to get it.
Yeah. It's not only the importance of a pause in a conversation, because I've heard a lot of agents and coaches talk about pausing and letting them think about it, letting them answer, but it's listening when they do, right? Because I think a lot of agents or a lot of people just in conversation are kind of waiting for their turn to talk, right? And you can tell when someone is waiting for their turn to talk.
Yes.
I think it's important not to be that agent who's waiting for your turn to talk. Be the agent who's actively listening, actively responding, and people are still chiming in about that 60 seconds and how once that's over, once everyone is out of a script, you and them, you're just having a conversation.
Exactly. And that's where the beauty is. Listen, let's go back to like the dialogue in the new agent. It's like when I was younger, I used to dance, not regular dance. They call me Disco Darryl, And I used to have white capizas, going to dance clubs back in the disco days. But anyway.
Any roller skates?
Yes. Yes. I have no pictures, thank God.
Oh, come on.
But anyway, when you're learning, I wanted to learn. So when I love to dance, and I wanted to learn how to dance with a partner. That I didn't know how to do. Right. So I took dance lessons, and when the instructor, they teach you these steps, right? And once you get the steps down, then you go on the dance floor, and you don't do like a Dance with the Stars where it's a routine. No, you invent your dance on the spot, right? But you take your moves, your dance steps you learn to the floor. Now, which steps you use, how often you use them, or what order you do it is based on your partner, based on the music, the tempo, and that is real estate.
That might be the best analogy I've heard for it because people, they'll often put too much emphasis on the scripts, or too much emphasis on the role play, or too much emphasis on, whatever it is on one aspect that they think is going to fix their business. But no single thing is going to fix your business. You need to learn all the moves.
Yep.
You need to read the context of your conversation or your appointment or whatever you're doing. And then like you said, implement different dance moves to match that.
The more times you hit the floor, the better dancer you become.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can take dance class after dance class. You can watch video or YouTube on how to dance. You can read a dancing book, but none of that is going to give you the skill and of the art of dancing without getting on the floor.
Same with
and
real
that
estate.
is calling the FSBO. That's going on a listing appointment. That's the dance floor. And when you first go, you're going to trip, you're going to mess up, you're going to use the same move like 100 times because it's the one you remember. But then eventually you throw some more in, you get better. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, we've got a question that's kind of in line with this from Amanda. Amanda's one of our regular listeners, so thanks for chiming in. She says, what specific follow-up system do you use for sell by owners and expireds? For example, like how many follow-up calls do you make? Do you send out mailers, social media? Like what do you find is most effective, and kind of what's your follow-up routine?
Yeah. So the here's how I always thought of, Amanda, about FSBOs especially, is that it's always urgent. Like if somebody needs to sell in the next 6 months, in my mind, well, buyers usually would look on the weekends. This is how I would just do it. And so if there's 4 weekends in a month and we got 6 months, it's only 24 real weekends. So in a week, it's now only 23. Then it's 22. So for me, it was always urgent.
Right.
I wanted to get that listing right away. First of all, when I made the phone call to the for sale by owner, my objective, I didn't list them all, but 7 out of 10 times, that was my number, that I would list a for sale by owner after seeing them.
Right.
So there wasn't as much follow-up because then there'd be other FSBOs the next. Like I try and get it. If I can't get it and I get to a point with them, I move on to the next one. I'm not saying not to follow. That's just what I did.
Right.
But to answer your question, Amanda, probably what I would do is put them into your CRM. Make sure that if you have some other stuff that you're sending out on a regular basis, like a newsletter, any mailing pieces, just send it out. But in the beginning, you call them, you get in the door, you have that conversation, and be committed to leaving with the listing then, because you don't want them to be a FSBO, because I believe every FSBO that sells on their own, actually they lose money and they make mistakes and it costs them and they don't realize this. So it shouldn't be, well, let me try it on my own for a couple of weeks and then I'll call you. No, I don't want you. What? It's like, you're going to do root canal for a couple of weeks on your own? No, you go to a professional. You don't want to do it on your own. Even if you could, you don't want to, because it's going to be a mistake. And then if I don't get the listing that night, then I'll call them depending on how the conversation went. It may be in a day, it may be 2 days, it may be a week. So every follow-up is customized based on that conversation and who they are.
I love that. I love that because you can throw out as many formulas and as many, you're going to get the appointment after X amount of follow-ups, whatever. You hear that all the time, and I think to an extent some of that's true, but I love that. It's the dance analogy again is, have that first conversation and then adapt and move forward as you see fit and kind of adjust to it.
Well, here's the other thing, Andrew, which is really important, because let me tell you something. God, my back. I've been doing this for over 30 years, right? And before I was speaking, I was training agents live. I won't go through all that. And so there's so much that I've learned in my 30 plus years. And one of the things that I've learned agents also do, Andrew, is if they put a lot of emphasis on the follow-up, they actually will not be committed to getting the listing in that appointment because they've got that follow-up as part of the process. So in other words, they go with a commitment to follow-up, not go with a commitment to get hired.
And you're saying you should kind of use follow-up as your fallback, right?
It's the last resort.
Right.
When you're face-to-face that first time, do or die. And if you burn the bridges that way, you'll be more effective on that appointment. Maybe you won't be so quick to get up when they say, we'll call you back in 2 weeks.
Right. I got you. Well, how is this at all different for expireds? We've talked a lot about for sale by owners.
Yeah.
What follow-up advice would you offer for the avid expired prospecting agent?
Okay, so I'm going to give you the thing that I'm really known for, Andrew, amongst real estate agents about how we teach them how not to use scripts, okay? Because it ties to the expired.
Right.
And that is you use stories, metaphors, and analogies.
Okay.
Which, by the way, when I did the dancing one, that's an example.
And the cooking one, and the other cooking one.
Yeah, exactly. What happens is when you use a metaphor analogy, there's several things that happen, and this is tying to the expired, is that the agent doesn't have to worry about a memorized script. They just remember the analogy. That's number one. So now they're using their own words. They're talking from their heart, not their head. They're not doing a script.
Right.
So they're just more effective. That's not. The other thing is it talks to people. The people get it differently.
Right.
Like when they say, you know what, I can pay a flat fee to get on MLS. Why would I pay you a listing fee? I can just pay $500 and I can get on MLS. Well, here, Andrew, let's pretend that you weren't going to sell your house and you decide to build an extension. So what you do is you go to Home Depot and you buy a really great hammer. It's $500. It's made out of titanium. And you take this hammer, you come home, and you put the hammer on your kitchen table. Here's my question, Andrew. Is that hammer going to jump off your kitchen table and build you an extension?
Nope.
Of course not.
I got to pick it up.
Because the hammer is a tool.
Right.
The tool in of itself is not going to build you an extension. And that's the same thing as MLS. MLS is merely a tool. The tool in of itself is not going to get the job done. Now watch this, Andrew. You can take that hammer and you can give it to a contractor who just started his business. Maybe he's not licensed and bonded. He doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. Or you can take that hammer and give it to a construction company. They've been building extensions for years. As a matter of fact, they wrote the book on how to build extensions. Here's what I can promise you, Andrew. That same hammer is going to produce two different results based on who you give the hammer to. My company, Power Realty, rewrote the book on how to sell a house in today's pandemic world. So we know we can get the job done for you. Do you see the analogy there?
I love that analogy because not only is it the tools, it's who's wielding the tools and who's using the tools.
Exactly.
And as a real estate agent, you're going to know how to use that hammer, whatever it is, whether it's the MLS or whether it's getting as much money as they can for the house. You know how to use those tools better than someone who isn't a professionally trained and practiced real estate agent. That's
exactly.
Perfect.
So now here, watch what happened. First of all, anybody that listening or watching this, can they go do the hammer analogy? Yeah. Right there. Did they have to memorize script? No. That's how I teach my students. We teach them metaphors and analogies, whether it's the fishing pole technique or the director's technique. I mean, we have over 100 analogies that I teach my students. Now, here's this started this whole thing when you asked me about expireds. I cannot tell you how many times when I go on an expired appointment and the homeowner would say to me, what are you going to do different than what the other guy said he was going to do or what he did?
Common objection. Super common
right?
objection.
So I'd say, well, let me explain to you how it's different. And then I would explain MLS, the hammer analogy. I would explain that selling a house is more than just finding a buyer. You've got to manage the whole thing like a production. Then I would use the Broadway show analogy. Nice. Then I would use the fishing pole analogy and how we use a net in our market. I would go through, and you know what? It's the same thing. I'm still talking about MLS, brokers, open house, public yard sign. It's all the same. But every time, Andrew, when I use the metaphors and analogies, the homeowner would always say to me, geez, no one's ever explained it to me this way before. And bada bing, they would sign the listing. Metaphors and analogies.
Is there a book of Darryl's favorite metaphors and analogies out there somewhere?
You know what? That's a good thing. There isn't. I got some a little over here, a little over there. My power agents, they get all my stuff. The people that are my coach, we do have a section in our website on objection handling, and it goes through all those metaphors and analogies. So, but no, I don't have the 3 books I wrote. That's not one of them.
Well, we might have to get you on that, Darryl, because that's a powerful topic. That's such a powerful topic. Because what it reminds me of is when we were talking about instinct earlier, right? And it seems like these analogies and these metaphors are kind of almost instinct manifesting in the form of conversation, right?
Well, let me tell you something, Andrew. My favorite part is when I tell an agent, when my agents on the Monday coaching calls that we do, they said, Darryl, I have this situation. The seller is this, blah, 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 blah. One of the questions I always ask my students to help them work through it is I ask, well, what do they do for a living? The seller or the buyer. And you know why I ask that question, Andrew?
Why?
Because almost always I will use the civilian's job as the analogy of what I'm trying to communicate to the client.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that, because then it's relatable, and then it's something that they can get, and that's amazing.
So what happens, the more student, and by the way, any parent watching this is how I raised my son. Ming, let me tell you this, Andrew. I became a single dad, my son, 14 years old. And I was like, how am I going to raise my son? Because I was on my own at 16. So I didn't have any parents really raising me. I had my own apartment at 16. I had 3 jobs. So I got an interesting childhood.
Yeah.
So when I had my son, and I had to raise my son, and it was around that teenage years, I was like, geez, I don't have a model because nobody taught me how to be a parent because I didn't have a parent. So I don't know what to do. But I'm a sales trainer, right? So what I did is whenever I wanted to teach my son a concept, a point, a lesson, I used the metaphor analogy. I went into his world, found something he understood, whether it was his football team, whether it was his Xbox game, and I used that as the metaphor to teach the life lesson.
Right.
And the reason why I'm sharing this is because everybody watching and listening, the more you think, how can I communicate my point with a metaphor analogy in your personal life, not just in real estate? It's like, whose line is it anyway? That television show where they make up scripts on the spot. You get stronger at creating metaphors on the spot when you do it on a regular basis. That was
it's like real estate improv, basically.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Real estate improv.
Excellent. I love it. Well, I think we could talk about this all day, but there's a few more topics that I want to touch on.
Sure.
In our hour here. So
hey, listen, this is your show, Andrew. I'm just here. Am I getting paid for somebody? Am I getting paid for this? All right.
I'll have to talk to someone else about that. I don't know.
Dr. Curtis.
Yeah, we'll talk to Curtis.
Money.
So this is awesome, and we've got people chiming in. Bada bing, bada boom. Thank you. Great info. People are loving this. So I want to get into before we hopped on this call. You mentioned that you have a specific voicemail dialogue that gets you a 50% callback rate, which is incredible. I've never heard of a 50% callback rate for anything. I ignore every call that I get that's not from someone I know, right? So can you share that voicemail dialogue with us and maybe break down why it gets such a crazy high return rate?
Absolutely. I will actually give it to you word for word just so you can really appreciate it. It goes like this. Hi, this is Darryl Davis from Power Realty. The reason why I was calling is I noticed you're selling your house, and I have some important information about that. As a matter of fact, I might even have somebody who could be interested in it. I'm not too sure because I first need to get that information from you first. Could you please call me back at your earliest convenience? That's the dialogue.
That didn't sound scripted in the slightest. It almost, it seemed like I can kind of tell that you're being very intentional with a lot of your inflections there, but I don't think it would come across that way to the person listening. I think it would come across as authentic and
which is really important. And people don't want to think that they're being scripted, because what's associated with scripted is inauthenticity and salesy, and it's just about you taking versus you giving.
Right.
One of the mottos that we have, I'll go back to the dialogue in a second, but just to put a pin in that part, our philosophy, I'm doing something for Board of Realtors webinar, and I was just reading the email before you and I got on the thing here. Right. And she said she wanted me to record for the members. What's the one tip of advice that you'd give to make sure that this next year is successful? So I was thinking about that before we got on. And I really think it's the philosophy that our power agents have, which is power agents don't sell people. We serve people. We don't close people. We coach people. And the reason why I think that's a really important distinction is because when we have our business be about making money, getting listings, which is important, those are gauges, but this is why people don't want to work with real estate professionals, because they don't see them as a professional. They see them as a salesperson who's committed to a commission. Right. So the more, top producers, they get to this point in their career, most of them, where their success or failure in their personal life is not going to be dependent on any one transaction. So there's a freedom of not being desperate. And so they can really focus on serving and not selling. Coaching people, not closing people, helping basically. And I think the more we as an industry can be more of that, I think that will actually help raise the perception that civilians have about us, that we are really about helping people. And what brought that up is because what you were saying about the script and the inflection. But the reason why the dialogue that I just went through, I think works so well, why we gets 50% return, is because it's telling the homeowner, hey, listen, I know you're selling. I have some important information. Could have somebody who'd be interested, but I got to first talk to you. It creates like this. Well, what information does it? Who is this? Like it's creating these incentives for the seller to call back. So that's why I think it works so well.
To me, there's a sense of incentive. There's also kind of an air of mystery, and there's also an air of urgency.
Yes.
Right. I might have someone right now that, and
yes.
I haven't practiced this, but yeah, I might have someone right now who, but I gotta get more details from you first. Like we can get this moving. I gotta hear back from you first. I love that.
Yeah. Cool.
That's awesome. Sweet. Well, let's cover a couple more points here. Next, I want to talk about listing appointments, right? Because these cold calls, whether it's FSBOs or expires or you're leaving voicemails, it's all about getting that listing appointment. Yeah. And then what if you get to that listing appointment and again, you freeze up? You don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. Yeah. What are the 4 parts? And you told me that you have 4 parts to a successful listing appointment. Can we go through each one of those and break those down a little?
Sure. I mean, I can give an overview and we'll get into as much detail as we can in the time that we have. Okay. So what I did, Andrew, is I created an acronym for the listing appointment. Okay. And the acronym is REAL, REAL. And the reason why I chose the word real is because that's what I'm committed to with my students, is serving, not selling, coaching, not closing. By the way, let's just talk about that coaching versus closing, because it ties into this real thing, the listing appointment. Is when we think about going to a listing appointment, closing people, if a homeowner heard that language, they would not think kindly of us, because people don't want to be closed. That's number one. Number two is closing sounds like it's about you taking.
Yes.
Coaching is about you giving.
Yes.
Now, for a person to be a good coach for another human being, they need to find out what that person is committed to accomplishing, what their struggles are. So that way, based on what they're committed to and what their concerns are and obstacles are, they can give them the best advice and coaching on how to break through the concerns and accomplish that which they're committed to.
Right.
Homeowners are committed to not just selling their house, they're committed to their next level in their life. They're going somewhere. Selling the house is a means to an end. So what we really do as real estate professionals is that we help people not just sell their house, but help them get to their next level. What we do is actually help change people's lives. And I tell my students to not look at your state license as a real estate license, but look at it more of a license to coach. Specific to the real estate industry. I'm a coach for real estate agents. Real estate agents are a coach for civilians, and they have a license that says that.
Well, what I love about that is that real estate, for a lot of new agents might be about lead generation and prospecting and trying to get, but eventually you want that business to grow into something that's self-sustainable, right?
Yes.
Where it's referrals and all that kind of stuff. So if you're closing, you're not, that person's less likely to come back and refer you to their friends to sell with you again in the future. Right. But if you're building that sphere of influence, building that repeat business and that referral business, that's the best way to do it, is to coach them and then to keep coaching them and keep following up. I love it.
Well, and here's the thing too. I think we as human beings, it's in our DNA. I don't want to get all scientific on you, but I will. So one of the books I wrote is How to Design a Life Worth Smiling About, which is actually based on almost 3 years of research. I took a course at Berkeley University on the science of happiness, and so I learned a lot about the body and the mind and chemistry. And one of the third chromosome in the DNA is called oxytocin, and oxytocin is the relationship chemical. Yes. It is when we are smiling, somebody else smiles back, there's a connection. My point is, it's in our DNA, Andrew, to be connected with human beings. Yes. It's in our DNA to be connected. One of the things we've learned about this pandemic is just how important that is.
Absolutely.
People have been struggling because of the lack of it, right? Yes. So anyway, going back to it is, I think most of us, it's in our DNA. We want to serve. We don't want to sell. We want to coach. We don't want to close. We want to help people. And sometimes we get that message gets lost in training. Like, all right, you got to close people and do lead gen, about all good stuff. And I'm not saying you got to run a business. You got to have your tools. But ultimately, I think if people wake up in the morning and say, who am I going to help today? Who am I going to serve today? I think they're going to want to pick up the telephone more, and they're going to want to go on more appointments. Let's go back to the 4 sections because I'm going off.
Yes. No, we're good. We're good. I love it.
All right. Good. So REAL.
REAL.
Real. Rapport. That's the R. So the first thing an agent needs to do when they go into a listing appointment with a homeowner is don't worry about getting the listing or what presenting price or talking commission, because if they don't like you, none of that, all that will be a non-issue because They ain't listing with you. People listen to people they like and trust, period. So you got to break down the barrier, focus on it. It's one step at a time, build a relationship, build that rapport. How you do that is touring the house, doing a lot of oohs and ahs. This is beautiful. Oh, you golf? I golf too. So you get that connection. Once you feel you got that connection, and here's a little side tip, is speed up the tour. Don't drag out the tour anymore. If there's some time during that tour with the homeowner, you feel like you broke through the wall that was there when you rang the doorbell, speed up the rest of the tour because you don't want to eat into your conversation time. Right. So now you run back to the kitchen table with the homeowner, you sit down with them, and you go to E, which is engage. How do you engage somebody? Is you ask questions. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should communicate in that proportion. Listen twice the amount of speaking that you do. The listing happens in the listening. So you ask questions to get to the source of what they're committed to. So we're engaging them. We're asking questions to engage them and to find out their commitment to their next level in life. Once we're clear about what that next level is, why they're going there, when they need to get there by, are you going to interrupt me? You have a question, Andrew?
No. Keep going. I'm taking notes. I'm taking very thorough notes.
Okay, now we're going to give them advice. So that's the A in real. We're going to give them advice. This is when we're going to advise them on how they can accomplish their next level. This is when we talk about what we do for our clients, when we put it on MLS, and when we do the advertising, and how the internet works, and how we schedule our appointments, and how we use virtual, and Once you're done with that, then you're going to, L stands for list and leave. I joke. Get the listing and get the heck out of there. But that's the listing appointment right there, the overview. That's the 4 sections: rapport, engage, advise, list.
I love it. And I am taking thorough notes here, and I hope everyone at home, I hope everyone at home is too, because there is let's see, people are chiming in. They love this. The listing.
Those of you that you can continue reading. Those of you that are just listening and you don't know what's going on, I'm seeing Andrew's face. He's writing notes. He's reading comments. So if you hear any dead air, that's what it is. It's Andrew doing his great job that he is.
I appreciate that, Darryl. Well, that's amazing. And those 4 things, because I mean, I don't know what else there is to say, if I'm being totally honest.
No, listen. They put it. That's a mic drop, Andrew. What are you going to say? You can't improve a Lamborghini. That's it right there. It's a Rolls Royce.
And you brought us the Lamborghini. That's amazing. That's so perfect. Well, and I love that it goes back to what we were talking about before, where the listing happens in the listening.
Yes.
And I love what you said about when you're going around, listen during this presentation, listen during the tour, but leave time to talk, because I think a lot of agents get caught up in okay, let's focus on the house. What about the house is going to sell this house? It's not just about that. It's about building that rapport and having a good relationship, which, again, whether you get that listing or not, can pay off in dividends down the road with repeat business, referral business. Again, it's about
Well, let's get
good relationships.
Listen, Andrew. I'll tell you this: the psychology. I mean, some of the newer agents, they may not have. They're not big listing agents. Here's something else I'll also do. When you talked about dragging out the tour, is they're almost afraid for the tour to end because they know the next step is to start talking about listing, and they're a little scared. So they would love to just freeze this moment in time when they're standing with the homeowner in the boiler room, just talking about stuff. So that's the other thing. They get in their own way. They drag out the tour because they're afraid to do the listing portion of the conversation.
So you got to find that balance between conversation, rapport building, and then also focusing on what are we here for? Listing and selling homes.
Listen, I tell agents, if we go back to the dialogue, because there's another secret sauce. So if I'm giving you the recipe to be a great chef, especially when it comes to FSBOs and expireds, there's certain secret ingredients. And here's the other one, which is this applies to the listing appointment, but a lot on the telephone. And that is, Andrew, I always ask agents, when you're calling a FSBO, what should you be committed to? What's your end goal? And of course, what they say, and that is to get the appointment.
Yeah.
And I tell them that's wrong. And here's why that's wrong. If you're focusing on calling a FSBO and getting the appointment, first of all, who is it about? It's about you, not about them. Right. You've also set up a win-lose scenario that if you do get the appointment, you won, but if you didn't, you're a failure. So there's a tremendous amount of stress that we set up a win-lose scenario for ourselves. So what I tell my students, Andrew, is here's what you should do. You should not be committed to getting the appointment. You should be committed to building a relationship with another human being. Now, here's the beauty in that distinction. In order for you to create a relationship with another human being, you have to ask questions. That's number one. So you get better at asking questions on the telephone. Number two is it takes the focus off of you and it puts it on them. You're focused on them. Where fear exists is in our head. So when we're focused on us doing it the right way, that creates fear and stress. But if you let go of that and say, listen, however it turns out, I get the appointment, I don't get the appointment, that's fine. But what I'm committed to is getting to know another human being. Now, every call, you won. You get the appointment, great. If you don't, doesn't matter. You still built a relationship with another human being. Now, same thing is true in a listing appointment. If you focus more on coaching and not closing, that coaching doesn't necessarily be tied to the result that you have to leave with the listing. See, coaching, you could actually give other advice. Maybe they should take the house off the market. Maybe they should do some other stuff before. So it's not about winning a listing. It's about serving, coaching, and it's a lot less stressful. It also makes you more effective.
I love that. And I love what you said about fear there, because a lot of agents focus on overcoming fear as if fear is inevitable. Fear doesn't have to be inevitable if you're of this coaching, helpful, teaching mindset.
Yeah. And listen, even when you're focused on them, when I call, every time I do, once a year, Andrew, I do a live event. Curtis has been there, and it's called the Inventory Intensive. And we packed the hotel, 800,000 people, whatever, and I call FSBOs live from the stage. Now, wow. Andrew, can you imagine what that's like to have 1,000 agents staring at you and you're
terrifying? That sounds terrifying.
Even though I've been doing this 30 years, right?
Yep.
Because listen, between you and me, there's some agents in the audience, they're rooting for me to lose.
Yeah.
Not because they're bad people, but because it's like a car wreck. It's like you slow down. It's a human being thing. Plus, I think some people are like, if I mess up, they're like, look, even Darryl can't do it, so I'm off the hook. So it's a weird thing, right? But what happens is that fear is a little bit of that, salt. If we go back to this a number of cooking analogies I'm doing. Salt is that little extra something that brings out the flavor in a dish. And even whether it's baking or whether it's not. So the fear is the salt of life. It makes it just a little bit tastier and exciting and
fulfilling.
What's that?
And fulfilling, I'd say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, because that's the other thing. listen, when my students call, like, so we have a Facebook group too, and that they're always chatting in there about their wins and successes. And the best part is when they share a win, it's not about getting the listing. It's about the transformation in the breakthrough that they had of not having fear hold them back. One of my other mottos is, it's okay to have fear, just don't let fear have you.
Yes.
And so that's the real rewarding thing, is breaking through that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, Darryl, I'm going to let that be kind of your final mic drop here.
Okay.
That we're bringing to the table. I love it. We're running out of time here. We've talked about so many amazing things. We talked about FSBOs, expireds. We talked about successful listing appointments, successful voicemails. Before we close here, I want to give you one last opportunity to give any agents listening or watching any final thoughts or advice that you think they should take away today.
Couple of things. Number one is, know that you're not alone. There's people that are rooting for you to win in your life. And make sure you stay close to them and connect to them. That's number one. Number two is, I've already alluded to it and said it, is that we don't just list and sell real estate. What we really do is we make a difference in people's lives. And the money you make is a gauge as to how many lives you touched and helped. So focus more on making a contribution to human beings and to families, and the money will follow.
Beautiful. Amazing thoughts. Thank you so much, Darryl.
Thank you, buddy.
Incredible.
Thanks for doing this. I didn't thank you at the top of this. Thanks, REDX, and you guys doing this for the industry. This is valuable. You guys are the best. I love REDX.
Well, we love you too. We are definitely going to have you back. So,
all right, buddy.
So let's schedule that later on. To the audience, thank you everyone for joining us and participating. We've got people saying great tips. Thanks so much. People are quoting you with your fear quote. This is amazing. So a lot of good responses there.
Great.
For anyone who maybe joined us late and wants to catch a replay of this, you can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, if you want to watch it. If you want to listen, you can find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen. Just go search for the REDX Podcast, and we will be there. You can check out this episode, past episodes, and if any of you would like to continue this conversation online, you can do so in a couple places. One is our Facebook Elite Prospectors Facebook group. The other is the REDX forum. If you're a customer, you can log into the forum and start a conversation there. So again, thank you, Darryl. We'll have to have you back. This has been an amazing conversation. And to the rest of you, we will see you all next week, next Thursday, same time, same place.
All right. Keep smiling, everybody.
You bet. See you, Darryl.
Bye-bye.